All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to ask everyone to stand. Mr. Brown, you remain standing, lead us in invocation. Mr.
Heavenly
Grievous,
Father,
lead us in the pledge.
pray with me, please. Our Heavenly Father, we come to you with grateful hearts once again for a beautiful day and for the opportunity to meet here as a body to make the decisions for Kingston. We just want to be thankful for this beautiful weather that we've had for the 4th of July celebration, celebrating a country, the best country in the world. And the citizens of Rome County came out and showed their love for Kingston and for the United States of America. But most of all, we give you praise every day for your Son who died for us on the cross to forgive us of all of our sins. We give you praise every day. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. First thing we'll do is ask if there's any citizens that wish to address the council tonight. All right, seeing them, we'll go into discussion of capital funding and refinancing of existing debt. City manager, the finance director, and Cumberland Securities. So I'll give it turned over to you guys.
Thank you, Mayor. As you all know, for the last several months we've been talking about funding for a long list of various capital expenditures that we've had and needs that we've had over the last few years that we know we have now, and it's always a question of how we're going to fund those. And we've looked, the conversation really started as we were looking at ball field lights and a couple other things, and well, if we're going to do this and potentially borrow the money to do it, maybe we ought to look at some more. Councilmember Childs has worked with me a lot. We've had a lot of conversations. Michelle and I have talked a lot about it, looking at what options we have to meet some of these needs that have kind of gotten backlogged. And I'm certainly never a proponent for borrowing money, but if you are going to do it, now's absolutely the time. And I think that we had a somewhat interesting or timely issue with some of our debt getting ready to come off the books. So we looked at how we could maybe incorporate that into it. And through all that conversation, you all directed me to look to see what kind of rates, what options we may have. And we reached out to both the bond fund and to Cumberland Securities. Got a little bit of what I would call generic information back from the bond fund. Got a much more detailed response from Cumberland Securities, who's here tonight. And I'll give them the floor in just a second to make their presentation. But wanted to look at how we could do this with it being, obviously we hope to save money long term, and I think we can accomplish that either way, just because of locking in a fixed rate loan at a very low interest rate. A lot of our debt is at a variable rate right now. But also, how can we make this budget neutral? And if you look at our current debt service, this coming year, kind of use that as a baseline. How can we do this without incurring additional expense? And if we have the possibility to improve our debt picture and also fund over $2 million in capital needs and be budget neutral or better, definitely something worth looking into. So, been working with Cumberland Securities. We've looked at a couple different scenarios, both of which they're going to present to you in just a minute. One was looking at refinancing all of our debt and the addition of up to $2.5 million for some of these capital needs that we've identified, but also a plan B, which kind of goes back to how I was looking at it in the first, and that we utilize our strong cash position to pay off two of our existing loans that are very close to maturity, the North Kentucky and the 2008 paving loan, leaving the Porter Park and fire truck loans as they are, just because they're within a few years of being paid off. But our one long-term general fund loan being City Hall, look at locking it in with a refinanced rate and adding the $2.5 million to that. So couple different scenarios there, but I'll let them come up, explain, and then we can double back around. But you know, again, I think the basis of the conversation is we know we have needs, and we have a chance to meet those at an incredibly low cost of borrowing money, which we probably won't see again and isn't going to last forever. So with that, you want to come up and take all the time you need, and I'll let you have the floor.
Right. Thank you. My name is John Warner. I'm with Cumberland Securities out of Knoxville. And David, thank you for the opportunity to come before the City Council and discuss this with you. I think David did a very nice job making a summary of what is before City Council. The resolution that you will have before you on the 14th, is that correct? On the 14th, contemplates exercising either one of these two options that we're going to talk tonight, and any option that you all might want to consider that's different than these two. So we're not saying it's either or. It's quite frankly, this is the two ones that we would recommend to you for your consideration. I think if each of you all have these proposals in front of you right now, I would like to start with option one, okay? That's the bigger, more aggressive proposal that we've put. And in summary, let me just say that given today's economic environment and given what the rates are and where we think rates may be going, I mean, if you've gone to go buy groceries, you know something's up, right? And it's just a matter of time before those rates should change, okay? Of course, all bets are off when you talk about central banks and the United States Treasury printing money as hard and as fast as they can. But this is how we see things, and we recommend because we think it's a prudent, conservative approach. Option one considers taking all of the city's variable rate debt and converting it to fixed, okay? And then also taking all of their water and sewer debt that they have and converting it to fixed as well. And as you go through the proposal, and as David had mentioned earlier, on page 2, this is going to serve as our baseline of what your debt service is, along with what what the city is using right now to pay for their current debt. And I think as I walk you through it, I hope that I kind of clearly explain the advantages of how we're going to approach this. And again, we're not fixed into anything at this point at all. If you go to page 3 of the proposal, the refunding of all of the city's variable rate debt, and when I say the refunding, I'm also taking in a consideration of a basic budget rate of 3% for the variable rate, because you never know what that rate's going to change, and it does change at least once a week, whether it goes up or down or doesn't do anything at all. We are anticipating a estimated savings of about $92,130, and that's in the net present value figure that is located right here in the proposal. That's what those savings would be for you today. Now, it does take into consideration level principal debt approach, and again, to refund all the debt, and your debt service starts off as high as $194,000 for a principal and interest payment, or principal for fiscal year in 2022, but eventually drops all the way down to 37, and that's because you have applied a level principal. And the reason why we suggest that you use a level principal at this time is because rates are so inexpensive that if you apply more principal to the debt now, it just reduces the amount outstanding sooner. You don't have to extend it any further. You don't have to kind of massage it to make it a little bit more comparable or comparable for what you would like to be able to pay. So that being said, that's the refunding piece of the general fund. On page 4, this is to fund the money for the $2.5 million worth of projects that you all are considering right now. So those two pieces together compose of the general fund, or the governmental funds, the city side of things. And if you go to page 5, you can see where the governmental side picks up the new money and the refunding piece. Now, one thing I want to bring to your attention is you will pay a little bit more money in the refunding piece simply because you are refunding more debt sooner. But because you're locking in on fixed rates as opposed to the 3% variable rate, you will be spending less money than what you're spending today to pay off that debt. Okay? And that's why you have that net present value of savings, is because you are spending a little bit more money on the front end, but it's always going to be less than what you're paying right now for your total debt service. Okay? Does that kind of make sense? I know at first you're thinking, well, wait a minute, why do I want to spend more money? Well, you're actually spending less money over time because of what you currently have budgeted. And then that difference overall is being applied, or you can apply it to your general fund. And then this right here on page 6 is where we start talking about the water and sewer fund. Okay, and again, the black line represents where your debt service is right now. And this is where you're going to make some substantial moves on the savings piece right now. And if you go to page 7, you can see two things are going to be very significant. First of all, you're going to have a gross savings of $523,000. And that's represented right here, Mayor, that line right there, okay? $523,000. But the best part is not only do you have actually real savings the first 4 or 5 years in terms of real cash, okay? You're also shortening the debt service in this area right here, okay? You're instead of having to pay it much longer, you're bringing it much shorter. And that's where you're getting so much of your savings is on the back end of this. And once again, you have a situation where you will be paying a little bit more money in years 26 through 31, but it's going to be far less than what you're currently paying right now. And of course, you've already saved in real cash terms the first 4 years of the refunding, as what is notified, as it's indicated in here, okay, underneath that column, where it's not in brackets. And then that shows up again, here we go, on page 8. Real savings right here, real cash savings right here. And although you'll pay a little bit more debt here than what you're currently paying or currently scheduled, because you shortened it up and it's so much less than what the revenue is right now, you wind up net savings for you, okay? Is that okay with everybody so far? And then on page 9 is what the refunding bonds look like for the water and sewer piece. And then on page 10 are the sources and uses of funds. And on this page, I guess the most important part you want to pay attention to is it shows the $2.5 million being deposited for the new money, and then the money that's being deposited for the refunding within the general fund side that we talked about earlier, all the variable rate debt, and then also the refunding of some of the variable rate debt and part of the rural development loan that you have on the water and sewer side. And then also the cost of issuance, which includes our cost as your municipal advisor, your bond counsel will have that, rating agency will charge for their fees and that sort of thing, and then you have other miscellaneous fees that you'll have involved with that as well, as are disclosed here. And we're also disclosed in the report to the state. Okay? And all those costs are incorporated in the bonds. No money comes out of the city treasury to fund this. It's all incorporated in your cost. Are there any questions about option 1 that you all might have? Because it seems like sometimes I'm moving the shells around saying you're saving some here and you're not saving some here. But the important thing is, sometimes in real cash terms, you are saving money. The other thing is because you're removing some of the variable rate debt off the table, and it's less than what you are currently budgeting right now, that's where you also, because you're paying principal, you're at a level area, you're having a drop off of your debt service far sooner than what you have right now. And that extra cash that you're paying today is what's funding that deficit. You have the money you could be applying to that.
Yeah, I think as you're going through that, one point to reinforce, and you mentioned it, is, you know, you're basing this on an average of 3% on that variable rate.
That is correct.
And I understand that, but I think we would be remiss if we didn't look at what is the possible worst case scenario. And, you know, we hope that inflation does level out and that things don't get as bad as they could get. But, you know, if you look back to the late 70s, you know, we've seen periods before where interest rates skyrocket, and we don't have a crystal ball, so that 3% could be a lot worse.
We don't.
And
right now, on your variable rated piece, you're paying next to nothing. It's all the other fees that are incorporated in that variable rate part, including the fees that go to the bond fund. Whereas I get my money when we do the transaction. You know, we close the transaction, and that's a one-time deal. The bond fund fee, every month you make that interest rate payment, you're paying a portion of that rate, 15 basis points, sometimes even more than that, to the bond fund. And that's just their business model, and I don't begrudge them for that. But that's something to take into consider. So even with that fact that that interest rates, the variable piece that moves every week, even though it's at next to zero right now, you're still paying somewhere close over 1% sometimes. Okay, maybe a little bit less, sometimes a little bit more. And I wouldn't be surprised if those rates start rising back up, because you can't get past zero, at least not that I've seen in the United States. Okay, and when that happens, you're at the floor right now. So as they go up, when you convert everything to a fixed rate, that never changes. Once you are locked in, you're locked in until that bond and all the other bonds after it mature. Okay? And if you also look at, let me go back to page 3 and just go back to the general fund reportion piece. I said, sometimes the rates right now on the variable rate are somewhere around 1%. And let's just use that as a number in our head. If you go to the third column, estimated interest rate, and it's got 0.60%. Okay, that's 60 basis points. That's a little bit over 1/2 of 1%. Then the next year we anticipate, when you sell these bonds, to be around 0.65, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9. You go out to 2027, and you finally get into a area where you're now talking about a number that's comparable to what your variable rate debt is. And that's what is that? About 6 years out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as David alluded, I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm willing to bet you that the rates are going to be higher in 6 years. And yet today, because of this, and I don't understand why fixed rates are like this right now, but as inexpensive as they are right now, locking into them makes good sense. If we were buying a house or buying a car, and it was going to be a big chunk of money, and it's going to be some long-term debt, if you can, if you say, well, do I want to risk the farm on being able to keep this low rate versus what we know what the current fixed rate market is doing, I know how my house would vote. But I also kind of like David's idea. If you don't have to take out debt, don't take it out at all.
David, what is our ceiling on our variable rate?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Do we?
It is prime plus 4, which is prime right now is 3.5%. So you're talking about 7.5%, and that's the usury. Now, the bond documents, when it gets above 7.5%, let's say 8%, 9%, the most they'll ever charge you is that 7.5% rate. But when it comes down to settling up with them, all that extra money that the bond fund had to pay, you're gonna pay them back. You will be paying them back, but you won't be paying them at that 7.5%. The debt may be extended a little bit further, but there are provisions on there where they make their money back. So it's in realistic terms, it is unlimited. Fortunately, you have what you are exposed to at any one particular year are usury fees.
So a couple simple questions. So in option one, what would be the total loan for the general fund?
The total loan for the general fund, the total loan for everything would be, and let's go back here to this last or second to last page. It would be 8.635 million. But it's replacing a lot of the debt, Mayor, that you already have in place.
Does that include the 2.5?
Yes, sir, it does. And if you look at the top page here, that's this piece right here. The 2.5 is the new money.
What page number?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on page 10.
Page,
Yeah, and
page 10, I think Tim's getting the same thing that I've got my little sheets laid out to.
Yes, sir.
What effect does page 7 have on the totals on page 10 if we don't do the water sewer?
As a matter of fact,
That's part of option 2.
Option 2.
So you have, basically you have 2.5 million, in debt service, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you basically have 2.5 million, in refunded debt. You have 2.5 million in new debt, and then you have 3.5 million in water debt.
yeah, it's about right.
Which
So from
bring-
a bookkeeping standpoint and a legal standpoint, we can't commingle monies. So how do we separate all that out so that the water customers pay their debt and the taxpayers pay their debt?
The exact same way we put together these proposals for you, we're able to separate that. So even though the bond or the investor of the bonds sees one thing, right? What the city is offering for their bond issue, we're gonna be able to give you two separate schedules. One would be for the governmental fund and one would be for the water and sewer. And
Which
we
is
do
how
that
we've always
regularly.
done it. Even if the bond fund was doing it, I mean, the bond investors don't care where the money
Comes
gets
from,
paid,
as long as they get
paid
No,
for
that's as
from.
long as they get
So-
paid.
Comptroller, then do we have to submit two different questions to the comptroller to get permission from both sides?
No,
What
sir.
I'm doing to now is going back to the water board, state water board, who's looking at us anyway. And I can't see David, see if he's
Oh,
nodding his
I'm
head.
sorry.
Well, I'm sorry, I thought you were asking him a question. What was-
I just threw it out there.
The request, we did one request for the entire resolution. Now, if there's gonna be any kind of collateral reports that we need to do afterwards, and you need to have a different set of numbers, I'm sure we can get those for you.
I guess we'd have to get approval from one, the comptroller, and then two, the water regulation board.
No,
We do
no,
not.
the loan is gonna get approved. What we would have to, by the same people, correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know, the biggest thing the state's gonna wanna see is how we pay the debt service. Make sure that water funds are being used to pay for the 3.5 in the general fund. That's the biggest thing there. As far as the Water and Wastewater Financing Board, you know, to be able to go back to them and, you know, not that we are reporting back to them on everything, but to be able to say, if we're asked, hey, we're saving money, you know, at a time where you're trying to increase our cash position and, you know,
But that's what got us in trouble. We saved money and paid stuff off, and then depreciate, and they came back and whooped us.
Yeah, well, we borrowed more, we borrowed a lot of money. That's,
Yeah.
you know, the depreciation, this
So
water
this will
money
affect the
is,
depreciation?
it shouldn't, no, because the
Just
depreciation's on the items, on the
Right, just
investments.
what we buy
So,
from here out.
from the
yeah.
tangible part of the investment, so we're
But
just
if you've
refinancing,
got-
so.
If you're depreciating a car and it's worth $50,000, you've still got that amount on the books until you come back down. It changes every year, month, 2
Well,
years, whenever.
Useful life, yeah.
And the other thing too, Councilman, I think that the interest expense is on your statement of net position, which is what I think y'all are talking about here. The less interest you pay is better for the statement of net interest or net position, and you'll be paying less interest. Okay, so that's a positive. The principal, I don't think, shows up on that document, and I'm not as versed as you all are, but I've been around enough to figure out how that statement reads.
And one of the conversations we had with Cumberland Securities was, even if we took the water out of it and didn't even touch the water debt, even if we didn't do the new $2.5 million, if we just looked at our general fund debt, then it would be worth still having this conversation just because rates are so low. Anything, if we just picked one loan, if we said all we're gonna do is just refinance City Hall, we're gonna save money because of the rates are locking in a low rate right now as opposed to the threat of a higher rate when interest rates inevitably go up.
Yeah, they've already announced 2 interest rates hikes before 2022 or 2023, I think.
And again,
possibly more.
That's based on what they know. I mean, it's anything can happen. Look just back, a few short years ago, when I was in banking, we were loaning money left and right, and then the housing bubble burst a couple years later, and you see, the economy could do anything. We don't know what's going to happen, and good situations could turn bad. And to have that security that we know, for the life of this loan, we're locked in at a low fixed rate. Again, no matter what scenario we look at, we're coming out ahead.
And then following up in my last comment about the depreciation that changes every year and all that kind of stuff, does anybody look at the fact that if we adopt that and if we go by the wish list that we've got, that again, we're financing vehicles that aren't gonna last the loan?
Correct.
No, not
And
that.
again, we have structured the debt service to take that into consideration because we don't want to put any automobile on for 20, 30 years. That doesn't make any sense. But when you've got larger capital projects whose maturity matches up the duration of the amortization schedule, that's where your match is.
Yeah.
And again, so we take that into consideration so you can tell your constituents that you're not funding a car for a longer extended amount of time than its useful life. You can tell them that with a straight face because that's what they've told us how they want to handle it. That's how we do things anyway for our clients.
And we won't, as far as, assuming that, we make this $2.5 million in new capital investments, depreciation won't be a factor on those because that's all on the general fund side. There's nothing utility related in that $2.5 million. But, again, we'd have to get in, once we get into this, if you all decide to do this and we have this $2.5 million on the table, then you guys are going to have to decide, okay, we're going to spend it on this, this, and this. And it may be that, instead of buying, if we want to buy 2 trucks from Parks and Rec, it may be that we pay cash for those and use this $2.5 million for something else. Most of the stuff on there is long term, but we're going to be saving money. So it's not like we're locked into one way into funding a couple pickup trucks, for example. There's a big difference in coming up with the money to buy something like that and coming up with the money to buy a fire truck or $600,000 worth of ball field lights or something along those lines. So.
And I lied, Mr. Mayor. Can I just one more thing?
I'm calling you out.
If this is a bond, this money comes at one time,
That is correct.
and then we put it somewhere until we allot and decide as a council what to spend it for. I'm talking about the rest of it, all the rest of it, but the $2.5 million
Right.
will go automatically to refinance the debt.
Right.
That's correct.
And that comes down day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however long it takes us to do that.
Yep.
And then the rest of it we put into an account and then come back to the drawing board and see who's got 4 votes to do what.
Generally speaking, let me mention one thing. the resolution contemplates, and it's very broadly written, okay, what projects you can and what projects you cannot. And it's pretty broad, so you have a
Okay.
pretty good swing at whatever you wanna be able to do. I do suggest that the sooner you get to spending your money, the better you're gonna be off, because you have a 3-year limitation. And then after 3 years, then you have to start making reports to the IRS for those excess proceeds and arbitrage. And
We
in
won't have
today's
any
market,
problems
Yeah,
spending
I don't
money.
think we've
We
got
won't
any
have
problems.
problems.
Yeah, we
spending
don't
money.
have that problem. Spending is not the
I'm
problem.
not a tax attorney or anything, but you ain't got that problem, okay?
We don't have that problem.
We'll spend it faster than that. I bet.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So that's the only thing. And we do have, people that work with other clients. The city of Murfreesboro is a good example. They borrowed a lot of money here recently and have a lot of big projects. And that money sits for a while, but because it's so large, they work with a person out of the Knoxville office of Raymond James, putting together a laddered portfolio, which kind of helps hedge some of your interest exposure that you've got out there
Yeah, I don't
for
think-
paying
$2.5
coupons.
$2.5 million would probably be a drop in the bucket for what Murfreesboro borrows.
Relatively speaking, yes, sir, but you know what? It's all important.
Oh, yeah. Now, so I guess our decision has to be if we wanna lump all of it together and pay it all off. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, yeah, so if we go into option 2, we're in a position right now, we're in a pretty healthy, and we don't know what our final fund balance is gonna be, we gotta close the year out and all, but we're in a strong cash position right now, and some years we don't have that luxury, and we haven't tapped into our fund balance for a while. I think we've been a lot smarter with our fund balance over the last few years than we've been, and we're seeing the benefits of that. We're in a position, obviously, you hate the thought of, let's pull out $500,000, but, if we're looking at adding $2.5 million into new debt, we're also taking 2 loans off the books.
Right.
And within a few more years, we got 2 more loans coming off the books. So, we would be in a point where, assuming we don't borrow anything else, within, 5 or 6 years, we have 2 general fund loans. We have City Hall, and we have this $2.5 million for all these other needs we have. So, yes, we're borrowing more money, but we're also using our cash to take some debt off the books, which I think is something you can always be proud of. And you're not always going to be in a position to realistically do that. My thought was in putting that option out there, again, because those loans are so close to maturity, you're taking a loan that's going to be paid off within the next 2 to 5 years, and you're going to refinance it for 20 more. Why do that when you don't have to? So that's why I wanted to be sure that you all got both options, and maybe you do want to refinance everything. But I don't think that's the only way you can do it. I think.
Well, I don't think if it looks like from what you've looked at and Michelle's looked at about, and bottom line is it's gonna save us money in the long run, I think that's what option we've gotta look at.
Yeah. I mean, we want to carry as little debt always as we can, but there's some things in the government world that you just have to borrow money for. You can't pay cash for everything you need to do. And again, if you've got to borrow money, now's the time to do it. The reason I just personally was looking at option 2 is because I just like the idea of going ahead and letting some of that debt that's pretty close to maturity, either paying it off, letting it roll off on its own, and then, City Hall's a different animal because we've got it stretched out for a long time anyway. It's nowhere near being off the books.
How many years is that on City Hall?
50 or
All
something?
matures in
37.
2037.
37.
Yeah,
37.
so, a long time. So, definitely makes sense to at a minimum refinance that, along with the 2.5. But again, it's however y'all want to do. But I think this is just a way, we have a lot of needs, and I know Councilmember Childs has mentioned this point before. These aren't just things we sat around and said, oh, we'd like to spend money on this, we'd like to spend money on that. We know we're going to have to do them.
We know we're gonna borrow the $2.5 million.
And,
I think-
if you do it a little bit at a time, we borrow a few, $400,000 this year and $800,000 next year. again, we could get into a situation where the cost of borrowing money is a lot higher.
But, right, and that's, it's kind of little bit of the fear that I have at the variable rate and how long, which stays as low as it is.
Mhm.
2 years, it may bump 2 or 3%, and then we're above what we would have got our rate today.
And I feel, again, and I appreciate you guys coming here, and I asked them here because I felt like of the two proposals we got, this was by far the best, and I appreciate your attentiveness more than you know. But to give you an example of what was submitted by the bond fund, they offered a 10-year fixed with a rate that reset after 10 years. Well, again, we don't know what rates are going to be in 10 years, so why would you do that? So when we had an opportunity to look at a 20-year fixed rate, to me, it's a no-brainer. But
Jeff, you got any questions or anything?
No, I thought option 2 sounded pretty good to me too, get something off the books. And it will give us more flexibility in the future when we do need to spend money on other things, right? Because our debt load will be less.
What, Shell, do you have so you're talking about North Kentucky and the paving and off the book, that's the first two, right?
Right.
Go back
those
there
are
a
the
little.
two that we've proposed since the beginning of this, paying off to offset the debt service for the $2.5 million.
Do you have those figures right close to your
They're
head?
in your packet.
They're in-
Yeah. I put
There's
two.
so many numbers on here, I can't.
What page?
get numbers.
What page?
So there's two.
Page 11.
Page 11.
Well, but what you can look at to give you an example, the spreadsheet that I made that's in here, which is the one that looks like this,
Yeah.
was in your packet. And basically I put both scenarios, but you can look, North Kentucky, we have 3 years left on that. Paving, we have 4 more. And if you remember back when we originally talked about just borrowing $2.5 million before we even thought about refinancing, the original comment was, how can we borrow $2.5 million and not increase our overall debt service? Well, the way we proposed doing that was paying off those two
Right.
loans and letting them offset. I just don't see, again, if we weren't in a position where paying those two loans off was an option, we may not have a choice, but I just don't see refinancing, and I can say this because I'm not in the business of loaning money, but I just don't see refinancing 2 loans that are that close to maturity when you have the ability to pay them off. That's,
Well,
again, that's.
you're talking a little bit over $500,000 for the 2 loans, I believe,
Mhm.
from what I've done a little bit of my admin over
Mhm.
here. And we can talk about this other thing here in just a minute. So that's the only question. I think that we've got to decide whether we want to go to option 1 or option 2. And
But-
I would really like to see how much closer we are and how much more fund balance money we think is going to be there, because there's some of these projects we got on there that I'm ready to get started today.
Yeah.
Excuse me, yesterday.
Yeah.
Well, the biggest thing, again, if we're talking about refinancing everything, it's a moot point because we're not tapping into the fund balance.
Right. But then we've got fund balance money there that's sitting there. What are we going to do with it?
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to go,
Oh, there'd
We'll
be,
find
there'd
a
be
way.
something.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, make sure you can make payroll till October when taxes come in too, so,
it's one thing, if we go with option 2, again, you're looking at taking $500,000 out of your fund balance. My thought, if we're doing that, okay, that's, let's do that and let's leave it alone for a while. I mean, we just because we've got it, we don't want to just go spending happy and drain it down, and then we hit another recession or something bad happens. But anyway, I mean, we've always been very careful at staying above a certain level. So, when you look at it that way, then you look at, again, that's why we brought you 2 options. If you want to leave our fund balance, I mean, right now, our fund balance is going to be, I think once we're audited out, we're going to see a big jump in our fund balance. And that's something pretty good to have set aside if you ever need it. So maybe if you're weighing the pros and cons, you think, well, yeah, it's a negative to think about refinancing debt that has that less of a term left. But at the flip side of that, it's awful nice to have to not have to take $500 out of your reserves. So, I mean, you could argue the pros either way. I just think, to me, the only negative is saying we're not going to do anything.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's gonna be a while too, really, before we know what the true fund balance is. I mean, I've got it whittled down to where the auditors don't have to make as many adjusting entries as they used to, but I'm not gonna know until they come in and do their thing and, go through it.
You know, one thing, we didn't do it, one or two of us may have been on it, but when we borrowed that money for paving,
Yeah, but no.
please don't ever
Don't do
let
that.
anybody do that again. I mean, here we are paying a payment per year, if I'm not mistaken, that's double what we've got in our budget to pave with.
Mm-hmm.
And we put it at, how many years was it? 20 that we put it on?
In 2009.
And we've already repaved part of the streets that we've done. Paving don't last 20 years. That's the reason I was asking about the pickup trucks, but.
And I agree with you on the pickup trucks, and, there may be a way to do that.
And that's the reason, that one sticks out most because it's sitting there by itself. I mean, we borrowed money just for that one deal.
Yeah.
Just like the widening of course, even though we didn't do a good job of widening the road to get out here, because you still go down to 2 lanes,
Had to be done.
and we were over a barrel on that because nobody had bid on it. We finally had to go out and negotiate with a high bidder just to get that done, if I remember correctly. So, we just need to be wise, and I wanted to say, act like it's our money, but I've never had this much money to act like it was mine.
Well, there's, and I think you raise a good point when you're looking at things like trucks for Parks and Rec or police cars or anything like that. I think that goes into one of the positives of refinancing everything is we're not taking that $500,000 out to pay those 2 loans off. So that's money in the fund balance. If we want to pull $200,000 or $300,000 out to buy some new vehicles, do different things.
Well, that was
That's an easy-
going to be my point,
It's an easy check
and
to
we've
cut.
discussed this before, that I was not for refinancing debt that's gonna be off in a couple of years. But if we refinanced it all and don't touch our fund balance, then a lot of these items that we have as expenditures, we spend,
Out of the fund balance.
that's right, and it's not finance debt.
We used
You
to do
can
that.
still keep the 2.5
That's
million
right.
in here without readjusting it.
Well, and you
And
use,
go buy
if we don't
more
use it.
and pay the trucks off.
Yeah.
And that takes care of it, and perception is a big thing, that's all we'll hear. Is, well, they borrowed money for 20 years. And
well, that's what I mean,
bought 2
and the money
cars.
that we didn't spend on trucks
And we'll go
being
spend that on the
financed,
others.
that we use the money on things that last that term instead of spending it on
Well,
things
and
that
you
don't.
gotta think, if we don't borrow, if we don't take $500,000 out to pay those 2 loans off, we have this $2.5 million. Well, if there's some shorter term things that we can pull out of there and pay cash with instead,
That's right.
that gives us this pot of money,
Yep.
for other stuff. And, we've already got in here a community center roof that we're done. We've got the fire hall. You're sitting in a building that's gonna need a new roof. So, that $2.5 million will get spent on one thing or another. We're just
And I'll
gonna
get
some
off
options.
the trucks, it may be the fire hall roof that we pay cash for.
It could be,
At
yeah.
$45,000.
Well, and looking at this list, a lot of this stuff is not gonna last long term. I mean, when you look at radios for the police department, I mean, they need new radios all the time. They're constantly upgrading and needing new ones, and a lot of this stuff's not gonna last very long. And the fire truck, just bought a new fire truck, 3 years ago? 4 years ago?
We did, but I mean, you've got a fleet of fire. I wouldn't have any problem at all financing a fire truck
No.
for that long because look
Because
how
of the
fire-
amount, yeah.
Look how the trucks are we have now.
Well, look at the cost we have in expenditures estimated for sidewalk additions and improvements. I mean, we could go much higher on that. There's lots of sidewalks that could be done, and so.
Yeah, you all can. There will be
Could
no
built.
shortage.
Right.
There will be no shortage of things to spend $2.5 million, and that's the beauty of it, is none of that money's going to get spent on
Who's
anything
gonna prepare
that
the
this
resolution?
body doesn't agree on.
Okay, do you have anything else on this?
I don't.
Mr. Brown?
No.
Okay. Ms. Doc, do you have anything? Mr. Johnson?
Yes. Reason when I first come with David with this and put those 2 trucks for parking recs in, David said, well, I don't like financing it for 20 years. I said, go down there and look at that junkyard we have sitting around down there at the community center and tell me how many vehicles down there is over 20 years old. The Rangers, they're over 20 years old. About everything down there is over 20 years old. I mean, I know financing for that long, but if you go back and look, like I said, most of the stuff down there, it looked like a junkyard, and it's over 20 years old, most of the stuff that's down there. I just like to see them get 2 new trucks, no matter where we get it out of, how you move the money around, as long as we stick with getting them 2
Oh.
new trucks, because they've never had new trucks down there.
Me too.
Yeah,
I
I'd
wanna
like to
stick
get
firm
out
on
of
that.
having
A junkyard.
old junkyards, you know,
Yeah.
I don't wanna see that again,
I
so-
mean, you drive by and you look and you see nice vehicles that's marked up, nice parking wrecks, and you know, you got 3 or 4 of them sitting there versus going by on the weekend and seeing how many they got, 8 or 10 sitting
yeah,
down there,
at least.
and people look.
But they
"What?"
all look like they're ready for.
And everybody's like,
junkyard.
everybody you talk to and say, why don't they take them junk vehicles out to the city garage? Well, that's the ones we use, you know. So that was the point of the 20-year thing, because everything down there is over 20 years old, just about.
I think we all understand, what we're talking about. I mean, as far as, this is a good discussion, and we can fix a lot of it.
I mean, like that sign we're supposed to put out on the interstate too. You know, I keep bringing that up.
I know. I didn't get a
Remember,
chance
that's
to talk
gonna have
about
the
that the
TVA
other day.
money we're supposed
Yeah.
to.
What was that?
The big sign out we was gonna put out by the interstate. I was
Oh,
on
yeah.
vacation last week and went by some of these little towns, and they had like 8 feet wide, 30 feet sign. Some town you never even heard of, but they had a nice sign.
Yeah, we
out
were
there.
supposed to partner with the Alliance on that.
Yeah, that's money with part. If we get everybody together on that, that'd be good too.
It's- the
One
money's
thing,
still
just
there.
a disclaimer, I'll throw out for my own amusement, that in 8 years, I've never had a park director ask for new vehicles, and so
Yeah.
I tell my department heads all the time, if you don't ask for it, you're definitely not gonna get it, so,
Right.
Well, the last
Just-
2, they said, well, we
just
never get
wanted
new
to
vehicles. I
explain
said,
that
you never
a
asked
little
for 'em."
bit, that they're not just being neglected, but you're exactly right, the need is there, and, you know, it's not the only department that needs vehicles.
Right.
So, Mr. Mayor, is this something that will be on the agenda for next week, or is it
Plan on,
month?
I'm getting ready to see Ms. Humphrey's had anything, then I'll make a suggestion.
Let me ask
Because
one
I
more
didn't want
thing.
him to go to a lot of trouble, writing a lot of stuff up and then not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, I want to make sure if I understand. Now, on the option 2 level, if we don't do those, pay off the 2 loans now, is it like any other loan, 2 years now, if we won't pay that one off 2 years early, do we still have that option to do that?
No, because it'll all be lumped into one.
Okay.
Not in option 2.
No, not in
No.
option
Not-
two.
not
in
Not
option
on
two.
option
No.
2.
Get off next year if you want to.
Yeah.
In option 1, you know, you're gonna be taking all of our
Right,
debt.
yeah, I understand
and-
that, but
and we're gonna
option
have
2,
one-
we could, if we done that, we still could pay the loans off. If we didn't want to right now, we could still pay off a year or 2 early. That'd still be our option, right?
Yes.
If we, I'm not saying we're going that route, but if we did, we could do it.
Basically, what you're saying, if our fund balance comes up good next
Yeah.
year like it did this year, we can just pay it off.
Yeah, that's why I'm wondering if we were questionable about it.
Yeah.
If we went that route, then we could have the option to pay it off if the fund balance was good.
If, yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of ifs in that scenario. I think, and again, I wanted you to have 2 options, because I always think that's a good idea. I think there's pros and cons to both. And, you know, it's either one, we're gonna be dipping into our fund balance for, you know, it's just a matter of, are you gonna dip into your fund balance to pay a couple loans off, or are you gonna dip into your fund balance to meet even more of our needs? You know, we have, all of our departments, we maintain a running 5-year capital plan. And every year, there's things in that capital plan that we have down for 18-19 that we have to move over to 19-20 and 2021, because there's just not money in the budget to fund them. You know, we have a situation right now where we're in a strong cash position, interest rates are low, we got a chance to actually to pick up a lot of cans that we've kicked down the road for a lot of years, and we may not have that, we may be sitting here 2 or 3 years from now, not have that luxury. So, it's, if we're talking about making investments to improve the city, you strike when the fire's hot. And, 2 years from now, our fund balance may be down here and interest rates may be up here, and we may not have the option to do either, so.
How long will it take to sell the bonds?
We expect to sell bonds in September and close in October. And when we get the resolution that you're gonna be taking up, you would have to have the response back from the state, saying they've read the refunding report and yes, move forward with it. That lasts 90 days. So if we get it this month, you've got 90 days that you can pursue with whatever action you want to take.
So will they
As
be
far as
through
the
the roof in
refunding's
90
concerned.
days? See, that's the first thing we may have to go into the reserve to pay for the roof on the community.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think we kinda figured that might happen.
Yeah. And, you know, the thing there again, we could, you know, offset that with something else.
Mm.
So,
The one thing regarding cash, rating agencies really like to see strong financial positions, and that's, one of the key parts of that is a strong fund balance relative to your regular operating budget, okay? That being said, if you can hold on to your cash, and the scenario he just gave where fund balance goes down, interest rates are way up, if you've got cash sitting there and you didn't spend it all today, and you have a big thing coming up and you don't want to borrow money, and rates will be higher then, that's the time you use your cash.
Yeah.
Not when it's cheap right now. And the second thing is too, when you do this bond issue, and let's just take the scenario, we take everything we've talked about in option one, fund it up into a bond. That bond cannot be refunded for a period of time, at which after that time, the city can call the bond and either refund it again, or they can take their cash if they want to, and refund all of it, parts of it, you know, however you want to do that. You still have the option to pay cash to pay off debt, and we can get a short call on these bonds, say 6-7 years out into the future. And so at that point in the future, when you have even a little bit more cash, hopefully, you'll be able to pay off some of the debt again, or then if you want to. You're not locked out for, once you go buy a bond, you do have options to pay it off if you want to in the future, is what I'm trying to get at.
Who's buying bonds now?
Right now, it's large, well, the largest buyer is, the largest underwriter is Raymond James. And they are, you know, they're the old Morgan Keegan out of Memphis, and I think they're now in St. Petersburg, Florida, okay? And they're normally buying, their customers are normally big institutions, life insurance companies, just regular insurance companies, pension groups who need big coupons way out into the future for their retirees, and they don't care what they pay for it. And that's why rates are so inexpensive right now, because there's nowhere else for them to put their money safely.
Ms. Humphries, you have anything else?
No.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How will this vote be set up? Will it be two separate votes, option one, option two?
What
Oh,
I'm
that's where you're
doing.
gonna go.
I'm
Okay,
doing that right
great.
now. So, resolutions, you drop the resolutions?
Yeah, the bond council does, Bassberry.
Okay. And when go ahead, Dave.
I was just gonna say, for simplification, and now that we're talking about how best to utilize, we've talked through how best to utilize the cash position. I think if we wanted to go with option one and refinance and not take out of $500,000 out just like that, I don't think, it's not a bad option. So,
I don't think it is either.
and you know, that way, if we come to you with a resolution next week, these guys know what to, they're not having to double their work, but.
Well,
Which bond council are you using?
Bassberry and
Yeah,
Steve.
but who?
Mark
Mammoth.
Mammoth.
Okay.
So I'm still learning.
Mark, draw both of them.
oh, that's what I'm
Yeah,
going.
yeah.
Yeah,
Here-
I mean, what I was thinking is,
The resolution is to not to exceed, so whatever option you wanna do here, that's a tactical thing. You know, oh, I like that choice better, I like that choice. You can still follow into the same bond resolution. And then the same thing applies to whatever it is that you want to do with your capital improvement plan. You can do whatever you want to, as long as it fits within that very broad category that Mark has written up as to what's eligible for you to spend the money on.
Okay, so you could have both options ready for us Tuesday night.
It's gonna be one resolution that's broad enough to
Not to
cover, and
exceed
you
the
all
$8
decide,
million.
you all decide which of the two that you wanna use.
Yeah.
So it is
Exceed
two
the $8
separate
million.
votes.
That's
First vote will
correct.
be option one or option two, and
Have
then we'll
one
vote on.
resolution, but
Yeah, and then you just pick either one of these, and if you don't like either one of these, and you wanna do something different, Councilman, this is what I do for a living, you
Yeah.
know, so you're not wasting my time.
But we've got it
We enjoy
started, that we know that we don't wanna exceed, we don't want any new debt.
That's
Other than the
correct.
2.5.
Right.
So you'll cap the resolution at
8.635,
8.5, 6 million.
8.635, yeah.
8.6.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess it would add to the agenda to make a decision whether we do option one or option two.
That would be.
And then vote on the
It'll be
resolution.
to consider a resolution to refund and, but Mark will know how to write that.
Is this a one vote or a two vote?
That's what I said.
Resolution, or is it a?
It's one, it's a resolution, not an ordinance.
Right, but we would still need to vote on option one and option two, so the
After
first
we-
vote
After
would,
we pass this,
after you pass
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, that's-
gotcha.
which
Gotcha.
could be
perfect.
next month.
Yeah,
Right.
It could be at a later time. I think this resolution has gotta get ready because of the 90
Yep,
days to
yep.
get.
Yeah.
That's correct, and the other thing is too, once you, whatever new money you want to do, we're gonna have to put a notice in the paper.
Mhm.
And there's gonna be a 20-day notification, so that the public is gonna be aware that you're gonna be taking on an additional $2.5 million for a capital project.
And this is also set up, since it's a bond issue, if the people come in a uprising and don't wanna do it, they could stop us.
Well,
That's
correct.
Like any bond
That's what
issue.
the 20 days is for.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we'll put on the agenda for the resolution for not to exceed the amount.
That's right.
Okay,
You'll have two resolutions. One will be an initial resolution, and the other one will be a detailed resolution. The initial resolution is explaining what the city wants to do in terms of, debt and that sort of, what they're gonna be issuing on the new money side, not the refunding side, just the new money side. And then the detailed resolution will contemplate both the refunding and the new money piece.
Okay.
And Scott Gibson will be here, to talk about that.
and we'll just have to decide once we figure out what our fund balance is and how we wanna do it and go from there.
That's
We
correct.
can do it.
we just need to get the clock rolling.
Right, okay,
on
alright,
those.
so we'll get that added to the agenda for Tuesday night.
That'll be great.
Okay,
And will Mark have those resolutions by the end of the week? you
Oh,
think?
yes, sir. I mean, God gives him a to-do list. He's the only guy I know that's just an attorney. Here's what I want you to do today. He just gives me a complete list, and Kingston is on the top of that list, okay? Because we know we've got to get this thing turned around and have it ready for you all to look at it and be prepared to ask your questions.
okay.
Reason I say the end of the week, our packets go out for the
Yes, sir.
council meetings.
Oh, I get that. Yes, sir.
And we don't like our attorney to have to work on the weekends to
No,
read
sir,
stuff,
we
so.
wouldn't want that to happen. Now, Mark, that's different.
Alright, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Attorney the
I hope
same
you
way
found
he
this
works on the
useful.
weekend.
Yes, very
Yes, thank
useful.
you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Alright, discussion of approval for city manager to apply for the 2021-22 Public Entity Partner Safety Partnership Matching Grant. I think it's something we do basically about every year, right?
Every year we do.
Okay,
Put it on.
put it out there. Alright. Now, overview of the year-end financials.
Thank you. I'm just, it's hard for me to write and think at the same time, so. Yeah, so I wanted to give you, obviously, kind of going along with what we've been talking about, but wanted to give you a little look here, knowing that none of these are finalized numbers. We're still in the process of closing out the year, but wanted to give you a little snapshot of where our year is ending. And, I love a good graph, so it gave me an excuse to make you a couple of those. But we are in a good position right now, and didn't know that was going to be something we were going to be able to say. When we look back, over the last year, we didn't know what was going to happen. And, on the revenue side, how bad were things going to get? How tight did we need to tighten our belt to get through it? And we got really lucky. And if you look at the first of the two graphs I gave you, you look at our key revenues, and you see that we exceeded. We didn't just maintain; we actually did better. And I think a lot of we're very fortunate. A lot of places that wasn't the case. And we talk a lot about that we don't have we talk a lot about, we wish we had more businesses and we wish we had a lot of that. You know, one of the things that when you're weathering a storm, you know, your sales tax can fluctuate, businesses close, people still have to live. And times like that, you're really fortunate that the bulk of our revenue base is property tax. But you know, we've done well. On the flip side of that, you look at expenditures. You know, we told our department heads at the beginning of this pandemic, you know, it could get really tight, it could get really ugly, and we need you guys to step up and keep things in line. And when you look at our key, you know, at our key departments, you know, you're looking across the board. Finance, finished the year at 76%, police 94%, fire 93%, public works 77%, parks and rec 93%. Every department we had came in well under budget this year, and I cannot applaud these guys enough for helping us get through that storm. So, you know, we have a horrible situation, and on both sides of it, we came out better than we were. And I think that's something to be proud of. And again, I'm not bragging on me by any means. I'm bragging on our department heads and, you know, our community. You know, you saw, because people weren't getting out and going places, they were supporting local businesses more. And you know, it's just, we're just in a good situation, and that's why we see right now we're sitting on, you know, over $2 million in cash on the general fund side, well over $1 million on water. You know, our fund balances are going to be strong, and it's just you guys, you know, even the time I've been here, certainly some of you all that have been on council a long time, you've seen the opposite. I mean, I know you've seen when our fund balance was pretty much non-existent, and when our cash was very, very low. And you know, I am proud of the way, the position we're in, and I just wanted to kind of show you a snapshot of that. Again, these aren't final numbers. Michelle's still got a lot of work to do to close out the year, but you know, the stuff we couldn't control ended up a lot better. The stuff we could control, our expenditures, our department heads knocked it out of the park and did what they had to do. So
They did a great job. Everybody did.
Certainly any questions you all have, but again, I wanted to just take a minute to kind of show you where we are.
You
as
know,
we
Kim
go.
and I can remember the days in July where we would have to go borrow a 90-day note to make the payroll.
Yep.
Because we had zero fund balance.
Mm.
Zero. But if you look at, you know, David is bragging on the expenditures. On the other hand, if you go to the revenue side, guys, look what even during this bad time, just look at that front page on revenues. You know, we're over on property tax collection. Of course, we don't ever use the total amount of money, which is a very wise financial decision, in case people don't pay it. And going down through your utilities and your delinquent taxes, and you know, part of that is because the sales market's so good in real estate in Kingston. If they don't owe their taxes when they sell that house and get them big bucks out of it, you got to pay your taxes. And that's the reason you see that it's gone up in every year but one. But we'll almost get, I dare say, we hardly ever have anybody in the foreclosure or the tax sale with the county. Very seldom that we have a lot, do we, Sandy? I mean, not compared to
Not compared to any of the other.
towns. We always pay our bills pretty well over here. But you know, if you look at we're finally realizing all of the Improved Act on the gasoline tax. If you look at it, how it's coming in. So, you know, this is probably the best shape the city of Kingston has been on in the 17 years I've sat on this council.
Yeah. Does anybody have any other questions for the city manager about the financial reviews?
Have we already requested the ARP funds from the feds, the COVID money?
No, not yet.
Okay.
It's all, the county got theirs.
They got half.
They got the first installment of theirs. Theirs comes as a direct appropriation. The larger cities get theirs as a direct appropriation. We're below that threshold where ours comes in a separate wave, and it's all at the comptroller right now, trying to figure out how best to disperse it.
Okay. Yeah, because I was wondering when we sat in that meeting, when Mayor Woody said that he had to request the money in order to get it, I didn't know if we had to do the same thing.
No, basically what he was referring to, they have the money. And still the state doesn't know how exactly they're gonna do this. We think, from what we're told, there'll be some sort of a portal, and basically we'll have to put in, if we wanted to spend $1 million, if we want to spend $1 million of our $1.6 million on water lines, we would go in and we would put that in, and
Then they approve it?
They would approve it.
Okay.
Again, all those are unknown
Okay.
right now, but it's kind of a mess, obviously, when you think of that many levels of bureaucracy involved. And, you know, I'll tell you, anything that comes from the federal government, whether it's stimulus money or FEMA money or whatever,
Takes forever.
you know, be ready for a headache.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, we're going through it with build. It's still not, we're
Yeah.
still not complete on that, so.
and, you know, there's gonna be more, in some form or fashion, there's gonna be more stimulus money coming. The infrastructure bill that you hear a
Right.
lot about, you know, we're already hearing, even though we don't know dollar amounts, certainly nothing's been approved yet, that will probably come down, be funneled down through things like CDBG and other
Oh, okay.
established grant programs that they will probably overfund with that, and, you know, look at a lot of that money to be earmarked, and Tony can probably attest to that, for paving and bridges and things like that. You know, this round that we're getting ready to get, you know, we've talked about water and sewer needs. Is the time to spend that money, because it may be that that's not allowed in the
Right.
next round.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have anything else?
I do not.
I'm sorry, I can't give you a short answer.
No, it's not a yes or no. Jeff, do you have anything? Tony, you got anything else?
Is somebody applying for the permits to do either or the sewer things? Is Mickey doing that?
He and I have had a conversation, and we've been trying to set up a meeting with him for a while now. The last conversation I had was that, and he offered this without any explanation, that he was gonna go ahead and apply for the permits to do it. Obviously, it's a lengthy process.
That may be a 2-year deal.
It's also a very expensive process, and why that had me scratch my head, because I'm thinking, why is he gonna pay this money for these permits if we're hoping he's gonna try and hand that over to us? So I don't know.
Especially if our line runs through the middle of the bridge, you would need both parties to apply for the permit, you would think.
Because it's probably gonna be in his name, and then when it comes down to it, he'll be wanting somebody to hire them to do part of the work,
Yeah,
if I had to guess.
could be.
But
Could
as
be.
long as y'all have had that conversation, so that we're, decide that if we do that with the stimulus money, and say, yeah, let's start, that's not let's start next week, that's
Yeah.
you know, permitting going across that bridge. Well, it can't hang it on the bridge, I think we've
No,
found
it'd be
out.
going
Gotta
underneath.
go under, so that's even more dredging, digging, but anyway, you're checking on that. Then the other things that I have, remember that we came to you and told you about the tournament that we lost. That starts in Harriman, Thursday, if y'all want to come out at 10:30. We play all day Friday, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And the city of Kingston has all-stars in every age group. They went to Sweetwater for the 5 and 6 last week. They're coming to Harriman as a district champion in each group. They're going to Greenbrier week after next, and then they'll be going week after next, 11 and 12-year-old. So just support your teams. The last thing I wanted to comment on is that, David, I know I've already sent you all and the department heads a personal email, but from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate what y'all did this weekend. Even though it wasn't a weekend job, I realize that it started way back when, back in 2020 when we canceled it here at this council. But I don't know, of all the years that I've ever seen that many boats on the lake down there. Changing the venue of the music to underneath the big tree. There was people out, I walked through every one of them, shook hands with about half of them, and I'm not running for a thing. But there were people that camped out, eating pizza and stuff, just laid out listening to that music, and they couldn't have done that up there on that hot pavement up there at the gravel pit. But I thought, they were lined up. The park at Southwest Point was completely full. And most of y'all say, I left early, just so I could go down there and look at it. They were camped out everywhere down there. The pavilion was full. It was just people everywhere. I think it went over well. I appreciate what y'all do, and pass it on to the bottom line employee too. I don't get to see a lot of those, but the next morning, you couldn't tell that we had anything. There wasn't a piece of paper, a cup, or anything. One of the vendors told me he sold 290 funnel cakes. And there were 6 or 7 funnel cake sellers. So again, I think that made Kingston shine above all other towns in this community, and I thank you all.
We thank you for saying that, and we had a great group of people come together, and it took every one of them to get that. But it's just like anything else when the employees of this city come together and work on something, there's about nothing they can't accomplish.
Yeah.
It was I even had a call today from one of our former mayors and former deputy governor, and he even commented that on what a great event it was. So glad to see that our peers noticed. But yeah, we're very, very, very proud of the job that everybody did.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anything, Ms. Knox?
Well, one thing I was gonna ask, I didn't get it in time on the agenda, but if, I know everyone has seen how, the veteran banners, the hometown hero banners have been just amazing on how everyone has, just sponsored one for a friend, loved one. It's been a huge success, and we still have several months to go for Veterans Day. And the project, we never dreamed it would be as successful as it has been. And when we started this, it was all, we're just putting it up. As far as the city and the public works, they've done a fantastic job getting those up, and they look amazing. The checks keep coming in. I'm still sponsoring. It's been just amazing how well. So one thing we wanted to do with Outdoor Kingston, as a side note, we wanted to add a link to be able to honor all year long, even past Veterans Day, to be able to have people to view all the banners. So the page just went live today, and it's a website, outdoorkingston.org, and we're just in the beginning stages of it, so I'm having to go through and proof that every person, because I saw a few banners were missing, so give me just a minute so I can get with our contact that's doing this for us. And that's just one of many things that's going to be on this Outdoor Kingston page. So that was one way we wanted to be able to honor the veterans all year long. But I really feel like we don't want to punish the public works and Tim's budget, and we're at a point now that we're going to need more banner brackets, and the brackets are not cheap. They're something that we use for other banners, but we're at a point that we've depleted all of them. We have banners waiting right now to hang up. Where that we do not take money out of his budget for these banner brackets, I was going to see if you all would be interested in moving money from, whether it be stimulus funds or whatever that funds would be, to be able to cover enough brackets to make it through Veterans Day, and then we could decide at that point if we wanted to increase the price to include some of the funding of brackets, or whatever we decide to do next year, or keep a line item for brackets. We right now have more posts to put brackets on. We've actually added some, if you've not seen them. They started at the county, or the city line of Galahar, and worked their way backwards. So it was all from a church that did that all for Memorial Day. It was amazing when you saw that. So all those banners were in their church, and then they of course wanted them displayed after that. So we have all the banner poles from that point. We still have more banner poles on Kentucky Street and on Highway 70 Gray Street. We can actually make it, and I truly believe the amount of people that are so appreciative of what Kingston's done for their veteran, it blows my mind. I mean, every time that someone will send a message, they absolutely are just beyond appreciative that Kingston will do this for their loved one. So I think $10,000 is about the number that we would need to be able to comfortably say that we'll have enough brackets to make it. And I think that's it's something that we will reuse, but I do think this is something that's very important to not take out of a budget, because I feel like that would be the right thing to do.
I was just gonna say, right now, with brackets that were signs, the banners we have that haven't been put up, and then some banners to order, we have about $6,000 in brackets that will be needed. And one of the things that Councilmember Stockton and I talked about was, Tim doesn't really have the money that, this, like she said, this really exceeded expectations. And I don't see him having to move existing funds around his budget to cover that. So my thought was, if to cover what we know we're gonna have to put up and some anticipated growth, if we went $10,000, take that out of the capital fund, move that over into Tim's budget, and we'll create a line item just for these brackets. That way he's not being penalized for something, in a separate project.
Well, and not only can it be used for what we're using for now, but like Christmas banners or whatever could go up on the same bracket. So I don't.
I didn't even realize they were coming out of his budget anyway.
I didn't either.
Is the same banners going to be put up every year?
Right now, with the banners that they've worn so well, and they've been up for a while, and they look so new that we told them that we would, after the city took them down, we were going to have volunteers that just come and cleaned them and then stored them and be able to put them back up, those same banners, and as long as they look like new, because you won't want to have, it's like a flag, and it is a flag, so you don't want to put something up that
Yeah, because I've had a couple of people contact me and ask them when we take them down, can they get their banners?
If they prefer that, they can, because we originally were going to do that. We just didn't dream it would be this successful. I mean, we were thinking we might have 30 banners, which is nothing. But it's like, it's simply amazing on how well they.
So when the people buy them from, you don't include the price of the bracket with the flag?
No, because we already had brackets to put them on, and so we used the brackets that we had. So we're at a point that we've just had brackets. We had some brackets that broke because trucks had hit it, and the city will use those brackets for other things, and so we feel like we're not paying anything for the banners, an individual is that sponsors.
It's not as big a hit on the budget, on Tim's budget, if we buy a bracket or two here and there, but if you're looking at having to buy, $6,000-7,000 worth, that's a pretty big lick. So that's why I thought, we need to find that money from somewhere else than his budget.
Well, unless anybody has any objections, and we'd like to add that item to the agenda for Tuesday night. Unless anybody has anything about it. Anything else? Mr. Childs, do you have anything?
Nothing.
Ms. Sanford, do you have anything?
I do. Like Councilmember Brown said, I just can't believe how everybody pulled together for the 4th. It was amazing, all the departments working together, and I would just like to say a big thank you to the city manager, David Bowling, because he is the first city manager I have ever seen out there working on the weekend tirelessly, moving things, lifting things, emptying garbage cans, and I've never seen that done before, and he did a lot of things that he didn't have to do, and I really respect that. I appreciate the help that you gave the departments, and Kelly and Tim did an excellent job filling in without a director, and I just think that they really deserve credit for being able to pull that together, and especially their first time out of the box doing it. And I've had also a lot of compliments. Everybody was commenting down there about the bathrooms being so clean. And they couldn't believe with that kind of crowd that the bathrooms were clean and had paper towels and everything, because they were saying that, you know, times before that hadn't been the case, and everybody was coming up and bragging and saying, just tell everybody that we're really happy that, you know, all the facilities were clean and everything went so well.
It did very well.
Appreciate you saying that, and I know you do too, and like I said, I'm just one of many, but it was a team effort, and it came off very, very well, so.
Anything else? I've got one thing. It doesn't got to be well, I'll let you go first. Then.
One quick thing real
You
quick.
go first.
You all had a couple emails from me, but if you could, those of you who are interested, as soon as you can, let us know about the TML conference. We need to get those registrations in, and we can't reserve rooms at the reduced rate until the registrations are turned in. So
I will be going.
So if you all
Kelly.
would, I've heard from a couple of you. I know Councilmember Childs has no choice but to go, but with his powerful position, but the rest of you, if you'll let us know as soon as you can, then we'll get those reservations made. And I think if we do, isn't it if we do
6 or 7
six,
one's
we
free.
get one free
I
or
think so.
something? So.
All right. This could probably be a quick answer. Where we at on with train?
No idea. They've been in a couple times, done their tours, looked around all the facilities. We've accommodated them every way we can, and now
Okay,
who knows what
that's
they're
enough.
doing.
All right, thank you.
Maybe derailed.
Anybody got
They
anything
didn't
else?
see the big sign.
How about the speed bumps? Only reason I asked them is I go to my friend's house and run across the two that we are gonna get. Where we at on that? Is that
Which ones are you talking about?
the speed bumps that, that we're gonna draw a proposal and stuff, to get and use or not use? So
We did that. The two on the ones on Montview are installed.
Right. So what have we decided to do after that? Are we gonna go with?
Oh, rewriting the policy.
So right now, we're just still under a moratorium,
Right.
correct?
Yeah.
I'm just curious. 'Cause it's
I mean,
He's been working on budget, that's what's happening there.
well, yes, I mean.
So like the next workshop, that's probably something we need to,
Well, yes, we have been working on budget and other things, and B, I haven't really gotten a sense from council that you all want to bring this back up. I mean, we're happy to write a policy and bring it to you, but if nobody wants to do it, I'd rather not spend time. I kind of got the impression, and maybe I took it the wrong way, that council didn't want to put any new speed bumps up, but. If you all want a
That, me
policy to
too.
do it, then
Well, while I'm new, I was just curious where that was standing. And I know
Yeah.
you've been busy with budget, so I'm not saying that's gonna put it in the back burner. It's just-
I kind of interpreted the moratorium as the fact that
What about it?
nobody wanted to deal anymore with it.
So
But,
we're done.
they're doing.
and
policy.
that's up to
We
you all.
got an
If
email
y'all
today.
want a policy, we'll
That they
bring
meet
you
on the
one. I mean,
28th.
but it's just.
They have all of our paperwork that's ready.
Again, I kind of thought when the moratorium that was council's way of saying we didn't want to deal with the speed bumps
I'm
anymore,
fine with
but.
that too,
Yeah.
I just wondered where we stood on it.
We
But
send
I
a
can-
patrol car out there with a ticket book and let them take care of it for about 3 days. That usually slows them down.
But if you all want a policy, we can put it back on the agenda and we can bring
Just
up a
remember
policy.
that everybody that comes down and says that their kid can't ride their bicycle in the street because they speed, they're not supposed to be riding their bicycles in the street anyway.
Thank you, Tony.
Anything else?
That sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm
It's
just
like-
curious.
Sale number of ordinance